I'm happy to be here and today, and so I have the opportunity to share with you a little bit of my story as far as being in Serra and how I got here and why I'm here today and what I think we should be doing as an organization. I really appreciate the fact, those of you who mentioned, and Gino, you started the ball rolling, just above the club level, you know, there's so much more to Serra than one incident or one event, even though that's how we attract people to Serra, is usually at the local level with some event, some kind of activity, and usually, and without a doubt, it's always about some person. So whether they're asking you to drive them up to a meeting or whatever, you know, somehow or another there's that personal involvement and invitation that gathers people and has them join it, something that they don't know for sure what it is yet. But there's an element of trust or some intrigue about what it is that they do. And so Serra is known on a local level in most cases because of what it does for the local vocation director and his office. And they'll have some public activity that will and strike, you know, some of the people that are be sitting in the pews, but most people don't know what we do because we're not everywhere. We're a small organization on purpose. So consequently, it kind of goes with you're under the radar, so to speak, in a lot of things that you do. But we'll talk a little bit about how we get to where we're at now in just a minute. So up in Toronto, in July, we had our convention. So after many years of false starts and having to stop, we finally got something going. We got this convention going. I'm really glad to see the people that went to Chicago. That was really the first activity that we'd done for some time, and that was a year ago. And that was really a good experience to kind of just gather together and a good place to do it. So that was great. And then since then we go on our cycle, our annual convention cycle, which is the International Convention. So we had our convention up in Toronto. So it's at that time that we have our delegate meeting. All the clubs are represented by a delegate. They have an opportunity to vote on pending matters that relate to Serra as an organization, and also part of what they do in that meeting, that delegate meeting, is that you elect your next year's international officers and you approve a budget that's identified and articulated to the people that are there. And so it was at that meeting that I was installed as president of Serra International. So I had an opportunity to give a presentation that evening and to kind of tell you who I am and what I think we should be doing as an organization. So I'll talk to you a little bit about, I'd like to share part of my story and my talk that I gave at that evening. And so with it, I'll be able to explain a little bit about who I am and how I got to where I'm at. So in particular, when I was up in Chicago, I recognized a number of people that were instrumental in my Serra career, and one of them was Father Ralph O'Donnell. So he's a priest of the Omaha Archdiocese, and he was also the past executive director of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, and he was the executive director of the committee called Clergy, Consecrated Life, and Vocations. And so they're kind of, so to speak, our liaison with the Bishops' Conference is that committee, CCLV. So he was instrumental with me to set up the Serra Spark program. So he came to, of course, I'm his friend. I knew him through other activities that had happened in Omaha. And so we were having lunch, and I said, what's our opportunity? Here's my opportunity as I was coming in as president-elect of the USA Council. And I said, I have a few years to make a difference here. What would you like us to do as an organization? So we're formally attached. We're part of the consulting committee for the USCCB on vocations. And so we sit at the table, if you will. Okay, and so they gather our information. It's a back and forth thing. What do you want us to do? How can we help you? This is what we're doing, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So he said what the bishops need and would like to have is they like to have vocation activities and information. Our vocation directors would like to have access to something that's easy to get to now. So I'm thinking, well, we've got, at the time, 80 years of experience of working with vocations as an organization. We've got a lot of programs that are out there. I said, maybe we could do something with this. And so he said, yeah, that's what we want. We want to be able to get something easy to use now, maybe something on a digital level so that they can just download something, have some materials, activities. I said, we can do all that. I said, but here's what's interesting to me, is that if we do that and we put something like this together, these activities that we've been doing for years, in this format, what I am interested in is that it gives our Serrans an opportunity to work at the grassroots level. So it kind of brings us back to where we started in a way. So what it does is it helps us reemphasize that vocations, just like your invitation to your Serra clubs, come at the grassroots level. They come in a one-on-one communication, that opportunity when you meet people to become their friend, to walk with them for so many, wherever they're going. You get to introduce the concepts of vocations, religious vocations, to young people as young as 10 years old. You'd have a number of programs that you do with grade school kids, with high school kids, and then you meet a young man or a young woman who's going into formation. You might have a formal adopt a seminarian program. You meet that individual, they meet you. You send them a note. You write it with your handwriting. You send them your best wishes. They communicate with you. You stay with them over those periods of years. And you know, when I was in Toledo, Dick, you'll remember when I was invited to speak to your club, I said, Sarah's got activities that go from the beginning, in a way, cradle to grave, if you will. You know, the whole program, as far as the encouragement, the information, the just welcoming young men and women to consider, to walk with them, to be their friend as they go through these ups and downs. Once they join the affirmation programs that we have, as far as Serra goes, and the many different fun things that we do that we're probably most known for is the fun things. You know, the golf outings, you know, the special appreciation dinners, you know, the different things that we do as Serrans. And then as they get in advanced ages, they are in retirement, our notes to them, our events that we do with the retired priests and the like. And so we're there, you know, for the whole thing. So as we go along with, think about what Serra does and how it interacts with this, I'm thinking this, talking with Father O'Donnell, to bring it back to my original thought, I said, this is where we want more people involved. I said, so let's talk about taking all those great activities, consolidating them, putting them in a digital format, and then representing them to many people who don't know anything about what we have, but also to put them in a format that's easier to use and more advanced, more up-to-date technologically. That became Serra Spark. So Serra Spark became a digital resource with the help of Father Ralph O'Donnell, a friend of mine who we happened to be in two places together that we could work together and bring something together to make it happen. How many times did that happen to you? Okay? And so those things are God moments. That's the Holy Spirit working in our church. And sometimes things just need to be polished up a little bit or re-looked at. You know, maybe your club has got some great activities that it needs to do and has done successfully for many years, but needs a refresh. It's kind of like looking at your house. You know, you get used to a lot of things, but one day somebody comes in and gives you an idea, a new idea, and all of a sudden you got a kind of a new breath of fresh air that's coming through your life. And it's the same thing that happens with our clubs and with our commitments to Serra. So my journey in Serra began in 1980 when I met my first Serran. His name is Francis Schaefer. He lived in Belleville, Illinois. He's part of the Serra Club of St. Clair County, which is right across the river from St. Louis. At the time, I was just 30 years old, and Francis was 70 or older. I don't actually know how old he was, but I bet he was at least 40 years older than I was. Yeah, even though there was an apparent generational difference between he and I, we came together working on a common program, and it was called TECH, Teens Encounter Christ. So the TECH retreat programs, which is where I also met Father Ralph O'Donnell, was that it was a retreat program that we were having great success, and we're bringing it together as a loose group of individual tech centers around the country, and we wanted to create a conference, and we wanted to hire the first ever executive director, and we wanted to organize this, and we wanted to just make it better than what it was individually. So even though we were decades and miles apart, we found ourselves working for this same goal, namely that was it, tech retreats. Francis was a Franny, I called him, was a Serra, and he spoke of Serra in the highest terms. He became my first intergenerational Serra friend. His Serra connection was instrumental in obtaining a startup grant from this Serra International Foundation for tech. Our organization, the tech organization, would not have started then without that important financial assistance at that time. Years later, tech has been documented to have reached over 100,000 people, young people, ages 17 to 21 in 79 dioceses with a Curcio type of youth encounter. A few years later, 1983, I was invited to join Serra. I joined for 3 reasons. First, Serra offered me a way to continue to be in close contact with the many priest friends that I had gained over the years through tech. And secondly, it provided me with a necessary adult faith-sharing, faith-growing group. The third reason simply was that a friend of mine invited me. And he personally invited me, and I felt, okay, confident, invited, welcomed, and, if you will, this is worth looking into. As a young man, membership in Serra offered me now new mentoring relationships with members from many walks of life and of many ages, most of them older or even much older than me. Those relationships helped me grow as a young Catholic man with a growing family and a budding career. Intergenerational benefits appealed to me. Every Serran comes from a local club. My club, the Serra Club of Omaha, was chartered, I think somebody mentioned that their club started in 52. Was it Toledo? Yeah, and ours started right around the same time, Dick. And we started in 1951. And 1951, by the way, was the same year that Serra was aggregated to the Vatican. And also the Serra Foundation was incorporated in 1951. At that time, Omaha became the 67th club chartered since the founding of Serra in 1935, which now in 2022, this year, numbers over 1,200 chartered clubs worldwide. With the most recent chartering, since I gave this presentation, which at that time was Kearney, Nebraska, the second club in the Diocese of Grand Island. Now we have a new club that we just chartered in North Houston, the North Houston Hispanic Club. Okay, and so these are the things that are happening. When I joined Serra over 30 years later, there were still charter members present among my club's membership, with many of them still actively involved in Serra-sponsored activities. And even the more older and more reserved people, members could be spotted easily in my parish and others doing one of the most important things Serrans do, and that's praying. It was a great group to fall into, and my associations and resultant friendships with Serrans over the years have been the grace of my life and of my family. The objectives of the Serra mission. Soon after joining, I began to realize how the club supported the objectives of Serra. The first two being most familiar to us, and first the admonition and the challenge to affirm young, budding, and lifelong vocations to the priesthood and vowed consecrated religious life. The third objective, and the one which I think of as secret sauce, so to speak, place a high value on its members becoming informed and formed Catholics and action-oriented leaders for their family, their local diocese, and society at large within a familiar community. That's why we call ourselves a club, because we know each other. Early on, our leaders understood that Serra wasn't just for anyone. It was an organization that strived to attract leaders and soon-to-be leaders within the local church. It was a vocation call in and of itself. In 1956, our then Episcopal advisor, Cardinal Samuel Stritch, the Archbishop of Chicago, said this to the Serra Convention that had been assembled at New Orleans that year. He said, "The Serran must not only be a good Catholic, he or she must be a Catholic who is striving for perfection." Later, this objective was refined to be congruent with the Vatican II teaching of the universal call to holiness. Serrans are to find the answer to this universal call within the context of their local clubs. How could it get any more important than that? As the saying goes, there's three types of people: those who make things happen, those who watch things happen, and those who say, "What happened?" And Serra is an organization that's known worldwide within the church that makes things happen. The doers, if you will. And I'm proud of that. Unfortunately, like other international service organizations, if there isn't an effort to provide new leadership, the organization undergoes a slow change in which one day it discovers that it has died to its mission. Maybe then being perceived locally as a knife and fork social club, or one that has observes one that has a hard time recruiting new members, or even a more difficult time retaining its members. These are symptoms of an unhealthy club. Healthy clubs are the bedrock of Serra. As Cardinal Stritch also commented in that 1956 speech, Serra has to become a large organization of small units, of clubs. Healthy clubs need to have good programs, good communication, regular membership drives, and lead diocesan-wide vocation support programs, as well as instruct local parish communities through vocation committees, local vocation committees, to encourage and affirm our potential and realize vocations. Serra Spark is a start of that. And the new Ignite diocesan training program that the USA Council provides to all dioceses is a big step forward. So compliments currently to the Ignite program to Ann Rote and Mike Downey in their capacity as president-elect, and then also Ann's role as the past VP for vocations, to promote the use of the Serra Spark program through a free, no-charge opportunity for dioceses to bring parish vocation materials to the local level. We've called that Ignite. That's the Ignite workshop. When we ask new people to consider joining Serra, we must remember that we are asking people to join an organization where they're expected to do something. Soon after I became a member, I was asked to become more deeply involved in the organization and was given tasks that said to me that even as a new member, board member with a card, I was expected to make a valuable contribution to the mission of the Serra Club in Omaha. I felt wanted and needed because of that. I realized that in healthy clubs, there's no peanut gallery. If there is, it's to your detriment. New recruits, be they young or old, want to join something that's bigger than themselves. Therefore, there must be expectations given to new members. Club leadership must provide work that provides or relates to a relevant mission, one that's intimately congruent with the expectations of the local bishop and his vocation directors, inviting new members to an organization that does important work. Keep this in mind. This is how your club becomes great. So let's come to the theme for the year. The theme is Serra, now more than ever. This is not a new theme, but it's an important theme. It's our time, not another time, this time, to meet the vocation needs of the church today and tomorrow, and of the organization. Unique challenges of this culture, of our culture, of declining religious identity and affiliation young people face us every day. With estimates as high as 80% of our young people drifting away from their faith during their college years, this generation is experiencing a crisis in faith. To answer this challenge, Serra created and developed the College Connection program, connecting graduating high school students with local college campus ministries. Between 50 and 75,000 students per year are now being connected to their local campus ministries through the Newman Ministries College program, which we initiated, and Dick Stoley from your club, is he from the Lima Club? Toledo native, and anyway, a past president of Serra USA Council, established and created and followed through with the help of many people from Serra. Challenges to the church in the wake of another challenge to the church in the wake of an adversarial secular culture. In the wake of the sexual scandals that have been largely promoted, many of our priests are feeling a sense of attack. COVID restrictions which pit parishioners against each other. The indigenous residential schools with their history of government-sponsored cultural assimilations are just some of the challenges that wear down our priests and religious. As our Holy Father encouraged Serrans in the 2017 convention that we had in Rome, he said, Serrans, we need you. Serrans, you are friends to priests and seminarians. Additional challenges relate to the historical legacy of our patron, St. Junipero Serra, which, by the way, I really appreciated the fact that the pastor here, the priest here, included him in the prayers today in the Mass. In answer to this, we need to study and understand and appreciate the real history of our patron and St. Junipero Serra. Attacks on his legacy are also indirect attacks on the moral authority of the church. We need to educate ourselves and rediscover the reason why our early founders for Serra claimed Saint Serra, Father Padre Serra, as their patron and chose to even name themselves after this great and holy Spanish Franciscan missionary. Challenges to the worldwide church is another one, in the decline of religious vocations in a church that is growing in numbers worldwide but declining in traditionally strong Catholic countries. There are now 11,000 Catholics to every diocesan priest in Brazil. There's 8,000 Catholics for every priest in Mexico, and even in the United States, 3,000 Catholics on average per diocesan priest in the United States. And finally, parish consolidations in the United States Church, which shifts the population from the rural communities to the urban, and an increasing proportion of Latino Catholics within the Catholic population, with now over 50% of our young Catholics under 18 are identified as Latino. Serra must realize the importance of its mission and must recognize the great gratitude that those who have seen Serra in active form in its local area are increasingly grateful for the support and zeal that Serrans bring to the local church. The zeal of our patron, St. Junipero Serra, in the work of vocations is a constant requirement and one that strong Serra clubs are always meeting. So it's Serra, now more than ever. As your president, I promise to keep that theme front and center in our work as we work towards the realization of being the lay vocations arm of the Catholic Church, as our own dear past St. John Paul II called us. Serra is relevant and organized to do very important work in our church, that being fostering religious vocations and growing Catholic leaders for today's world. Please pray daily for vocations, and then let's roll up our sleeves and get to work. The harvest master awaits our labor. Thank you. So I've got a few minutes, and thank you. I'd like to offer this time for questions and answers or comments about what I presented to you today, and we can start anywhere you want to start. Anybody? You know, your comment, I appreciate it. Thank you, Gino. And Serras need to look at themselves as leaders in that whole effort, this vocations, to create a culture of vocations, as we talk about. So easily, it rolls right off the tongue, doesn't it? But the concept, I mean, to change a culture is so, it would just discourage you immediately if you really understood the context of what you have to do. But we don't do it alone. Of course, God's going to inspire us to do it one bit at a time. So you can imagine the task that we've got to do that. It's big. So we have to think of ourselves as leaders in this effort. And so as we bring, say, for example, the Ignite program, where we're taking the Serra Spark activities, these are programs that have been in Detroit. Where's Tom? So I mean, we've got that Adopt a Seminary. Oh, you've got the 31 Club up there. And so, I mean, to promote the 31 Club through all the parishes. And so that's an effort that's supported and sponsored by Serra in the Detroit area. And they put all those calendars and sign-up opportunities for those parishes. And it takes people to do that. And it invites people to participate to a level that they can handle right off the bat. And so Serrans need to understand that that's what they do, is that we help people be conscious of that. Maybe you say the Serra Prayer for Vocations or another prayer at your local parish community. Maybe you can, talk to the pastor, and that's something that you do. I know that there's a parish in Omaha that said the Serra Prayer for Vocations for 40 years now, after every Mass. The people in the pews, they know how to say it. They're not checking the book. What the heck are we talking about? No, it just rolls off the tongue. And out of that parish are coming vocations. So you look at it, so these effects, we don't know where that's going to happen, but it happens because we believe it as our faith. That's how God is going to act, asks us to act. So the other thought I have, Gino, as you mentioned it, is that it was and when I think of the origins of Serra, so how did Serra get started? So at first it was just 4 business guys who were Catholic sharing their Catholic faith at a lunch, and and they started inviting more people just to kind of share their Catholic faith and life and whatever. And these are young. I'm going to say they were young. They were probably, almost all those guys were probably in their 30s or 40s, except one guy was in his late 20s. So the 4 founders of Serra, were relatively young. And so it was after some time that they decided to formally gather together that they discovered or decided with some help that it would be vocations, that there would be the outgrow of that internal development that they're doing as a community. So if you're praying and if you're gathering for a particular purpose, God's going to ask you to do something about that. All right, and so what is it that he's asking us to do? So first of all, we want to gather our people so that they get to know each other, so they have that sense of community. Okay, that means that you have good prayer programs, you have good club meetings, you have interesting things, you do things that involve people, you ask them to do certain things. And then outside of that, so we're gathering, we're praying, we're getting to know each other. I call these Christed friendships. Okay, there's a special dimension to a relationship. Father Ralph O'Donnell, who I mentioned to you about helping us get the Serra Spark program off the ground, the priest that I met through these tech retreats, this is more than just an acquaintance. Okay? We spent a weekend praying together because we were on these retreats. You get to know you get to know people at many different levels. Some you don't even understand why you know it. But you gather together, and you got friendships. Those are those kinds of friendships that last, endure. Don't they endure? Okay? And then out of that comes good action. Good action. So this formed and informed, goes to this leadership thing. All right, so you want to say, where's our potential leaders? Well, the potential leaders, you're not going to find them back in the small corner of a Starbucks, and you got to drag them out and first convince them to go to church, and then you got to no, these people they're all around you. So in your activities, you're going to run into people like this. These are people that are action-oriented. All right, so now there's different definitions, and I think there's different levels of involvement that people can have. So I admire, for example, the Knights of Columbus, and they have a program, the Tootsie Roll Sunday thing. They do it for March for Life and this and that, and it's a great program. And maybe some individual said, I can do Tootsie Roll Sunday. I mean, I can wear that apron, and I can hand out Tootsie Rolls, and I can hand out poppies, or whatever they do. But maybe that's their level of involvement, okay? So I think of that as maybe that's some way that your local parish can do that. And you as a Serra leader of St. Malachi, say, we're going to have, I think it's tomorrow, Priesthood Sunday. And so maybe in anticipation of that, the Serra members that are part of the St. Malachi parish community organize a affirmation program where they get people to send nice notes to the priests, okay, thanking them for their vocation, thanking God for their vocation, etc. And somebody says, I can do that. I mean, I can send a note. I can do whatever. Here's a pen. Here, you give it all to them, whatever it takes. But maybe that's the involvement that starts something else. Okay, and so God looks at it. I mean, there's like a certain group that are like the Uber performers, all right, and so that's great. Not everybody's an Uber performer. Okay, I mean that's the reality. That's the 80-20 rule, I guess, or the 10-90 rule, whatever your number happens to be, or the 0.05 and whatever. Whatever it is, but then it's in those contexts that you engage. And so that Serras need to look at themselves as leaders at their local community, even though they're at a diocesan level. So Serra's a diocesan. That's why there's not a Serra club in every parish. It's a diocesan organization. It's not a huge group. It'll never be a huge group. It's the Marine Corps. It's not the Army. All right? And so it's just like, you got to look at it, okay, how are we going to lead this thing? And so then you do, but your action plays out at the local level. It plays out one-on-one. All right, and so that's how God will bless this thing. So think about, for whatever reason, I've had this image came to me in the last 20 minutes twice. Mother Teresa, when people must have thought she was crazy. She says, I'm going to take care of the poverty of the poorest of the poor here in this godforsaken place called Bangalore, or not Bangalore, but Calcutta. And so what's your job? And it's kind of like one of those things like, well, how are you going to make a difference? It's not about how I make a difference. God wants me to do this. This is what he's asking me to do. St. Paul, in his journeys, he wanted to go to Greece. Oh, God said, nah, ain't where you going. I want you to go to Macedonia. What? Macedonia? There's nobody up there. It's a terrible place. I might not live. That's where I want you to go. So, it's just like, I don't know where God's going to take us. Okay? But for sure that you got to believe that this is the kind of work that we're supposed to do. We do it one-on-one. We get organized. We work with the church. The church loves Serra. I can't tell you how many times, I don't know how many times you have to hear it before you start to believe it. Because I don't know if you believe it. It's like, it's a nice group. But you know what? The work is tremendous. It's so important. So it's one-on-one. It's organized. It's bigger than you. It's why we're together. And, it's relevant. It's important. The Pope says, we need you. We need you. All right, so, okay, that's good enough for me. Okay. Sign me up. Okay, thanks a lot for your time. It was great visiting with you.